I stood at the edge of the cemetery, the sound of the priest's voice fading into the wind as the last words over my wife's grave were spoken. People clutched tissues, some cried, others simply stared at the polished coffin being lowered into the ground. I didn't cry. I couldn't. After 65 years of living and nearly 40 with Margaret, I had learned that tears were often wasted on people who never saw their true worth. Margaret had been my companion, my critic, my occasional betrayer, and my anchor. And now she was gone. What no one around me knew, not the weeping neighbors, not the gossiping relatives, not even my own son, was that Margaret had left me something. Something massive. Hidden in the folds of grief was a secret that tasted almost like revenge, though I never spoke of it that way. She had left me a second house. Not the one my son had his greedy eyes on, not the one filled with dusty furniture and fading family photographs. A different house, unlisted, unspoken of, tucked into legal papers and whispered instructions only I had received. Alongside it, $570,000 in clean cash. Enough to start again, enough to prove I wasn't the helpless old man my son believed I had become. At the funeral, Daniel, my son, hovered near me, his arm around his wife, his expensive black suit more tailored than respectful. He whispered in her ear as I stood by the grave, and I saw the smirk that touched her lips. He thought I was finished, a burden, a man too weak to fight back. The weeks after the funeral were a blur of casseroles and condolences, but under it all, a storm was brewing. Daniel grew bolder. He no longer spoke to me with even the shallow politeness of a son pretending to care. Instead, his tone shifted to commands, to ultimatums, as though Margaret's death had stripped me of the last shield between his cruelty and my silence. One afternoon, as the cicadas screamed outside in the heavy summer air, Daniel barged into my living room. He didn't knock. He never knocked. He stood in the doorway, tall and smug, papers in his hand. "Start packing," he said flatly. "The house is sold." I looked up from my chair, my glasses sliding down the bridge of my nose. My newspaper lay open on the page where I had been circling local events. My coffee had gone cold, but I didn't move. I just stared at him, the way one stares at a snake slithering too close. He waved the papers like a flag. "You heard me, Dad. The house is gone. New owners will be here by the end of the month. Consider yourself lucky I managed to sell it so quickly. Market's hot." His wife Carla appeared behind him, her arms crossed, a smug smile playing at her lips. "We can set you up in a retirement home," she said sweetly, the kind of sweetness that made bile rise in my throat. "Someplace where you'll have company, you'll thank us." I leaned back in my chair, folding the newspaper slowly, deliberately. I let silence stretch between us until Daniel's smug grin faltered. Finally, I smiled. A small, quiet smile. "I already packed," I said. The words hit him harder than a shout would have. His face twisted in confusion. "What do you mean, already packed?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I stood, slow but steady, letting my joints pop as I rose. I walked to the mantel where Margaret's photograph stood framed in polished oak. She had known this day would come. She had planned for it, and I had followed her plan to the letter. Weeks earlier, before her death, she had confessed to me the existence of the second house. "Don't tell Daniel," she had whispered, her frail hand gripping mine with surprising strength. "He'll never understand. He'll only take. This is for you, Derichov, for your freedom." She had smiled, a thin, tired smile, and slipped the key into my palm. Now, as Daniel sputtered behind me, I felt the weight of that key in my pocket. My entire life had been a series of compromises, of bowing to Margaret's wishes, to Daniel's demands, to the invisible chains of family obligation. But not anymore. Daniel's voice grew sharp. "You can't just walk away from this. That house, this house, it's all part of the family estate. You don't get to keep secrets from me." I turned, meeting his eyes. "Oh, Daniel," I said softly, "you have no idea how many secrets your mother and I kept from you." For the first time in years, I saw him falter. His wife's hand touched his arm, but he shook it off. his face red with anger. "You think you're clever. You think you can just disappear." "Yes," I said simply. Because I had already disappeared. Every night since Margaret's funeral I had been preparing, documents signed, accounts shifted, cash tucked neatly away. The house he claimed to have sold. Let him think it was gone. Let him think he'd won. Meanwhile, the real game had only just begun. That night I lay awake, listening to the distant sound of Daniel's car peeling out of my driveway. He would stew, he would rage, he would plan. But I had time. Time and an ace up my sleeve that he could never imagine. Margaret's voice echoed in my head. "For your freedom, Derichov, don't waste it." I closed my eyes and smiled into the dark. The morning after Daniel's announcement, the summer sun bled through the blinds, painting thin golden stripes across my packed suitcases. They weren't the usual worn-out leather bags of a retiree clinging to old vacations. No, these were newer, sturdier, waiting like silent soldiers lined up near the front door. Every zipper closed, every compartment filled with the careful precision Margaret had drilled into me. Documents, cash, keys. Even the letter from her, written in shaky handwriting just weeks before her passing, tucked safely between the folds of my shirt. I sipped my coffee and listened to the silence. For years, silence had meant loneliness, neglect, abandonment. But now, silence felt different. It felt like a weapon. Daniel thought he had cornered me. He thought selling the family house was the final nail in the coffin, the last shove to break me. What he didn't realize was that I had already slipped through his fingers. I didn't tell him about the second house Margaret had left me. I didn't tell him about the account only I could access. And I certainly didn't tell him about the lawyer Margaret had arranged to meet me, an old friend of hers who owed her favors from decades back. That morning, as I locked the front door for what I suspected might be the last time, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time since my youth, I wasn't defined by Daniel's demands, Margaret's scolding, or anyone else's expectations. I was simply Derichov, 65, weathered, scarred by life, but free. The drive to the lawyer's office took me through the heart of the city, where the streets hummed with life. I passed the same coffee shop Daniel used to beg me to stop at when he was little, back when he still thought I was a hero. The same playground where I had pushed him on swings while Margaret reminded me not to push too hard. Funny how memories rot when poisoned by greed. At the office, the lawyer, a gray-haired woman named Susan, welcomed me with a warm handshake. Her eyes lingered on my face, searching for the grief I should have been wearing. Instead, she found something else: resolve. "Margaret was a remarkable woman," she said softly as we sat. "She thought of everything. She wanted you to be safe, independent." "Independent," I repeated, almost tasting the word. Susan slid a folder across the desk. Inside were the deeds to the second house, an oceanfront property Margaret had secretly purchased years ago, paid in full, tucked away in legal shadows so Daniel could never sniff it out. I ran my fingers over the paper, my heart pounding. For a moment, I could almost see Margaret sitting beside me, her lips curved in that sly smile she wore whenever she managed to outwit someone. "She also left you instructions," Susan added, pulling out a sealed envelope. "She said you'd know when to open it." I slipped it into my pocket without breaking the seal. Margaret had always known the art of timing. As I left the office, a storm cloud of anticipation built inside me. Daniel would come back soon. He would bring more threats, more smug smiles, more papers waving in the air like weapons. But I was no longer unarmed. That night, the confrontation came sooner than expected. I was sitting in the kitchen, the scent of roasted chicken filling the air, when the front door slammed open. Daniel stormed in, his tie loosened, his eyes wild. Carla followed, her heels clicking on the tile. "You think you're clever, old man," Daniel spat, slamming the papers onto the table. "You think you can hide things from me." I didn't move. I calmly poured myself another glass of water. "Good evening, Daniel, Carla, chicken." Carla sneered, her eyes flicking to the suitcases still lined up by the door. So it's true, you're running away. I raised a brow. Running, no, preparing. Daniel's fists clenched. You think you can outsmart me? This is my inheritance, my future. You're just a placeholder. Your future? I asked softly, standing to meet his glare. Your mother's future was me, Daniel, and she trusted me more than she ever trusted you. His face went crimson. Don't you dare. Don't I dare what? My voice sharpened, slicing through his anger like glass. Tell the truth, that your greed blinded you, that you were so desperate to bury me alive you never noticed the ground shifting beneath your own feet. Carla's hand gripped his arm, but he shook her off, veins bulging in his neck. Where is it? He shouted. Where's the money? Where's the house? I know she left you something. I can smell it. I chuckled, a low, deliberate laugh that made his rage boil hotter. You'll smell nothing but ashes if you keep digging in places that don't belong to you. For a long moment, silence choked the room. Daniel's eyes darted to the packed suitcases, to my calm expression, to the envelope bulging in my pocket. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that he was no longer in control. He grabbed the papers off the table and stormed out, Carla scrambling after him. The sound of their car engine tearing down the street was a song sweeter than any lullaby. When the house was quiet again, I opened the envelope. Margaret's handwriting filled the page. Derichov, if you're reading this, it means the moment has come. Don't waste time arguing with Daniel. Don't try to change him. Take what I've left you and live. Really live. The second house is only the beginning. There's more, far more waiting for you if you trust yourself. Follow the instructions enclosed and you'll see. I read the words 3 times before setting the letter down. My hands trembled, not from fear but from the weight of possibility. Margaret had built a path for me, one step at a time, long before her death. And Daniel, with all his arrogance, had just pushed me straight onto it. That night, as the cicadas wailed and the moon lit the edges of my packed suitcases, I whispered into the silence, Margaret, I won't waste it. The next morning carried the kind of crisp silence that made every sound feel louder than it should. The kettle whistled sharper. The creak of the wooden floor under my slippers echoed like thunder. Even the steady rhythm of my own breathing felt amplified. Maybe it wasn't the silence that had changed. Maybe it was me. I could feel the shift. Margaret's letter lay folded on the table, its corners worn already from how many times I had opened and closed it through the night. Her words didn't just sit on paper. They throbbed like a pulse, reminding me that there was still more, that I had barely scratched the surface of what she had planned. By noon, I was in my car, headed toward the second house. The direction Susan had given me led past the familiar highways and out into winding coastal roads where the air tasted like salt and freedom. With every mile, the weight of Daniel's rage loosened from my shoulders. When I arrived, the sight almost buckled my knees. The ocean spread out before me, infinite and wild, waves crashing against rocks that looked older than time itself. And there, perched on a bluff like a quiet sentinel, was the house Margaret had hidden from everyone. White walls with blue shutters, wide windows drinking in the horizon, a porch that begged for late-night conversations. It wasn't just a house, it was a promise. I stepped inside, the wooden floor cool under my feet. The scent of fresh paint lingered, mixed with the faint aroma of lavender, Margaret's favorite. On the kitchen counter sat another envelope, waiting as if she knew I would come today and not a moment later. My hands shook as I opened it. Derichov, it read, this place is yours now, but it's not just a home, it's a shield. Inside the study, hidden beneath the floorboards, you'll find the files. Do not ignore them. They are your leverage. If Daniel or anyone else tries to strip you of your dignity, you will have the power to remind them who truly holds the cards. Files, my pulse quickened. I searched the study, lifting the rug, tapping at the wood until a hollow sound answered me. With some effort, I pried up the board and there it was, a metal box, dusty but intact. Inside were folders, dozens of them, financial records, signed contracts, photographs, evidence that Daniel had been siphoning money from accounts he thought no one knew about. There were also files on Carla, her debts, her secret dealings, the kind of things that could ruin reputations overnight. Margaret hadn't just left me a home, she had left me a weapon. As the realization sank in, my phone buzzed. Daniel. I let it ring until his voice filled the voicemail box. You think you've won, old man. You can't hide from me. This is my legacy, not yours. If you don't hand it over, I swear you'll regret it. His words should have shaken me. Once they would have, but now I only laughed. He had no idea how deep Margaret's foresight went. That evening, I walked the shoreline behind the house, the surf washing over my shoes. I thought about all the years I had wasted letting Daniel dictate the rhythm of my life, letting Margaret fight battles she should never have fought alone. And I thought about the moment at her funeral, when Daniel hadn't shed a single tear but had whispered to Carla, "It's all mine now." The memory burned. Back at the house, I sat at the desk with the files spread before me. For hours, I read every detail, every transfer, every signature, every lie. By the time the clock struck midnight, I knew exactly how Daniel had built his life of arrogance, on a foundation of theft and manipulation. And now I had the power to tear it all down. The next day I called Susan. My voice was steady, even calm. "It's time," I told her. She didn't need clarification. Margaret must have warned her about this moment. Within an hour she was at the house, her briefcase snapping open like a vault. Together we went through the files, page by page. She nodded, her expression growing sharper with every discovery. "Derechav," she said finally, "with this you could ruin him, financially, legally, socially. If you choose to press forward, Daniel won't just lose his claims, he'll lose everything." I stared out the wide window at the endless sea. Somewhere deep inside, a part of me hesitated. Daniel was still my son, my blood. Could I really destroy him completely? But then I remembered the way he had leaned close after Margaret's coffin was lowered, his breath hot with venom as he whispered, "Don't get too comfortable, old man. You're next." Yes, I could. That night the storm rolled in. Thunder cracked the sky, lightning illuminating the waves in violent bursts, and in that storm I made my decision. Daniel had chosen greed over family. Carla had chosen cruelty over compassion, and I was choosing freedom over submission. I wasn't just going to defend what Margaret had left me. I was going to strike back.